So have you ever bought something and there was a problem with it, something wasn't quite right, and you ended up either accepting it or returning it or just plain complaining about it for the rest of your days? These are issues that should be caught in quality control checks, QC. And as collectors of Transformers, we're very well versed in QC issues. So I thought about it and wondered, what exactly are the top 10 overall QC issues for Transformers collectors? These probably apply to other products as well, but we're going to try and stay focused. This will not be specific characters that had QC issues. It was kind of difficult to amass this one. Of course, it is based on fan votes. So what I did is I took all fan votes that were for a particular issue and kind of put them together. And I will use some examples of specific characters to exemplify some of these issues. Hope that makes sense. Any way you cut it, based on fan votes, this is going to be the top 10 QC issues for Transformers as voted on by fans all across social media. That's going to be our focus this time around in the latest GotBot Counts Down. Hey one, hey all, welcome back to the channel. I'm your host, your most humble of hosts, Dennis Moulton, aka GotBot. As always, man, please like, comment, share, of course, subscribe while you're at it, my baby. Hit that notification bell, please. It helps me out a ton and it lets you know when content of all sorts goes up here on the channel. Check out Machinery of Man, The Everything Factor, all the groups that I'm either a mod or an admin for, as well as all of my social media links. All of that in the description down below, also in the description down below. And if you're in a position to help the channel to grow, you can use the donate link. You can check us out on Patreon. You can see what we have to offer to you through Spring. Or, of course, you can hit the join button right here on YouTube and become a channel member. And as I said, this is the top 10 QC issues. Now, some people voted for something specific. Like, let me give you an example. Some people said, the clear plastic of Studio Series 86 Jazz. So, instead of just being a vote for Jazz, that became a vote for clear plastic, right? Or somebody would say, two of the same knees on a certain character. Okay, it wasn't a vote for that character, it became a vote for a misassembly issue. Got me? You understand? We all on the same page now? Alright, so how about we jump into it with two honorable mentions first, and you'll kind of see how this goes just from the honorable mentions. The very first one is ratchets that are either prone to breakage or the teeth are too wide on them. So in other words, kind of, misdesigned, I suppose, ratchets. And sometimes these can cause breakage issues or stability issues, which is a QC issue. Case in point, the Titans Return Triptychon, known to have a breakage of the hip in the ratchet in his hip, or the Kingdom Arc and one of its shoulders, or the teeth issue for the Combiner Wars Motormaster, right? Making the Motormaster's hips either in too close or out too far. That's a stability standing issue. So, I guess poor use of ratchets would be the honorable mention there. The other one would be poorly toleranced friction joints. Specifically, there were votes here for some of the Combiner Wars Limb Lads, but not just them, also the Siege Tetrajet mold was mentioned, specifically Starscream and how his chest pops off. Some people have said that some of these parts, like the elbows, for example, some of the knees of the Combiner Wars lads, the chest of that Starscream should have been pinned. Now, there's an argument saying if it had been pinned, you might have just cracked the plastic. At least with a friction joint, if it pops off, you can put it back on. In terms of QC issues, the issue is, if the design was poor and parts are popping off, then you should go back and redesign it, right? So the popping off of poorly toleranced friction issues, that would also be an honorable mention. So the ratchets that either break or the teeth are too wide, and poorly toleranced friction hinges, neither of them made the list. They're both honorable mentions, but neither of them had enough votes to actually place in the top 10. So who did? You know what we're gonna do. It's like we always do every week. We're gonna kick things off with number 10 first. Coming in at number 10 is overly thinned plastic. And there were a couple of examples given of this. Most notably, the chest of the Kingdom Black Arachnia and how the tab breaks off. The Cheetor, that the tab tends to break off the neck on most people's copies. My first copy, I mean, it honestly, it just crumbled into pieces. And then I got the Netflix one. The tab immediately broke off that neck. I don't even know if it was ever on there. So, not so much that the design was bad, but you thinned the plastic so much that it now compromised the design. So that's only a couple of examples of that, but it has happened over the years in many ways, especially when you have engineering that is really, I would say, designed for a bigger offering that ends up now getting reduced in size and therefore thinned out, and therefore the original engineering probably doesn't apply because now you're not using materials that can handle it. Overly thin plastic, an ongoing problem, a rare problem, but a significant one when it happens, and it got enough votes from enough different characters that it was able to take the number 10 slot. Coming in at number 9, we have two of the same part. Now, let me explain what that means. When we are talking about, for example, certain transformers themselves, sometimes they get two left arms or two right arms, or the knees should mirror each other, but instead of that, they are the same knees, or they're put on backwards. Sometimes it's only for accessories. Most notably, and recently, the Tyrant Spear that came with the Titan Class Black Zarak. There are people who got two of the long pieces that are the same, and therefore you cannot actually put the spear together. It's impossible. I also heard of an example where two of the claws were the same claw. I don't know how you end up with like two right claws. Like it's a Titan. I don't know how that went unnoticed. I remember, though, this happening years and years and years ago. When I was just a wee lad, I don't even remember what the name of it was now, but it was the Cobra helicopter that had like 3 cockpits up front, and 2 of them could come off and become little submarines, and they came with some Viper that you know, is supposed to pilot it, and mine had 2 of the same arm. So, like, it's not a new issue, but it is something that probably should be generally checked before things go out, right? It is, of course, a misassembly issue, but it's kind of its own misassembly issue. It's its own subset, because unfortunately, when you have 2 of the same part, it's going to affect the functionality of the item at its absolute core, because you don't have the part to fix it. If you have 2 right arms, you're probably not going to be able to transform it. Case in point, my Ramjet from the 2-pack that became notoriously difficult to get, that I was fortunate enough and so thankful to get off Masterfar. Shout out to Masterfar. Even that had 2 of the little wingtips be the same. So when I transform Ramjet to plane, you can see that one of the wingtips is not fitting the way it's supposed to be because it's the wrong wingtip. 2 of the same part, either on or on the accessory, is what took the number 9 slot. Coming in at number 8 is one of the most frustrating things, at least for me and for many fans, and it's missing parts. I have seen the Tyrant Spear not be included with Titan Class Black Zarak. I have seen tires be left off. It happened to me with my punch counter punch, but I've heard of it recently with a few other offerings, such as the Legacy Leader Class Optimus Prime coming with, I heard of one person who was missing, I think it was all of the tires off of the trailer. They were on Optimus, but they weren't on the trailer. So kind of weird if you ask me. The missing head problem that has come up because of the lack of packages. Now, I don't think that's so much a QC issue, but the reason that I included votes for that is because if you didn't have substandard packaging, if you didn't have packaging that allowed people to remove the heads, then it wouldn't be happening. You know, it wouldn't be a problem. That's a new issue. You should have kept the plastic window. And no, having it windowless is not a solution, because you have no idea who has stolen something out of that box and put something else back in its place. You need a window to see the product. or you need to accept that these products are going to be opened by a lot of people before they leave stores. The fact that the packaging is lackluster is what leads to the QC issue of missing heads. In terms of missing parts, I've heard of certain seekers, for example, not having their null rays. I have heard of swords not being included with the Kingdom Rodimus Prime, or his sword, I should say. So it's a number of things that can be accessories or can be actual physical parts that affect the functioning. Missing parts. You're paying good money. You deserve everything that you pay for. Missing parts took the number 8 slot. Number 7 is an oldie, and thankfully no longer an issue because the chemical makeup actually changed for this, but in its heyday it was one of the worst things ever. Of course, I'm talking about GPS, gold plastic syndrome. And yes, gold plastic syndrome was an enormous problem. It affected a lot of G2 offerings, like Electro, was that his name? I can't remember the guy's name, but he's like all gold and he crumbles to pieces. Or Beast Wars, Silverbolt, or if you prefer Maximal Skywarp, I think it is the other name used for it. And again, like the original is made out of gold. I reviewed it and it was scary to transform it because of the gold. Or one of the worst ones, Transmetal's Megatron. Great design. The Takara one was a little reddish and has survived. The gold one that came out in North America, or really more bronze than gold, but it was gold, crumbles to pieces. Or Beast Wars Neo, I think it is, Randy. Not Torka. Torka's, again, a little red, but Randy was gold, and I've seen that video. We've all seen it where the guy crushes it in his hand. Gold plastic syndrome. Let's all be thankful that it's not a thing anymore and hasn't been for many years. But when it was bad, and it caused a lot of people to turn away from the products because why are you spending your hard-earned money on something that's going to break? GPS solidified itself among the fans at the number 7 slot. Number 6 relates to design, but it's something that should be caught in QC, and it's snapping pegs / breakage issues. There's a lot of breakage that has gone on, especially in recent years. I mean, I get it. We all get it. At times, things are going to break. Such is life. But it is very common for MP44's knees to break. That's a design issue that should have been caught in QC before this was mass produced. So many people, though this hasn't happened to me, so many people complain about Earthrise grapples pegs breaking off in the feet. Now, I've explained this before. You cannot wiggle it. You cannot finesse it out. It got to be straight in and straight pulled out. If you're not doing that, it is going to break, but I don't have a stress mark on mine. I haven't had anything break. A couple of people that voted said that theirs was broken in package. I'm not sure how that one happens, but it shouldn't happen. Somebody voted for Earthrise Optimus Prime, saying his knees just crack off. I have several Earthrise Primes, and it hasn't happened to me, but some people noted breakage on the shoulder of the Netflix Soundwave, saying that it is, I guess, too tight of a shoulder, and therefore the armpit area is prone to stressing and potential breakage. The arms of, going way back now to the Fall of Cybertron Jazz / Sideswipe, shear right off. If you had a good design, if you were using quality products, then these things would not occur as often or as regularly as they do. The tab on the chest of Black Arachnia, again, that might be overly thin plastic, but again, it's a breakage issue. So whether you're talking about things snapping or things breaking, it's all in the same boat. And when things break because they're designed badly and that breakage is not caught in QC before things are mass produced, then yeah, that's a QC issue. Yeah, that's something that they should have said to the designers, hey, you gotta go back and you gotta redesign this part or fans won't be happy. You gotta keep the fans happy, and you do that, well, by offering things that aren't gonna break. Breakage. Snapping took the number 6 slot. Ah, yes. Can you feel it? Can you feel it? Yes, things are becoming more intense because we are at the most coveted of locations, man. The halfway mark. And at the halfway mark, we delve into the look of a character. Most notably, missing/flaking paint applications. It's great to have paint. Not much point if it's only going to rub off, rub away, flake off. You know, I mean, these are significant issues. How often have we seen people, for example, recently, who show their legacy Skywarp and only half the chest is painted silver? How often have we seen unpainted faces or unpainted eyes? How often have we seen vehicles where the entire back is molded but not painted? There's no back windshield. There's no back taillights. We were getting it a little bit early days of War for Cybertron. These details added back. But I would say now we're starting to miss a lot of those details again. It's happening more and more. Happened a lot with some of the Prime Wars trilogy stuff. Especially the back end of vehicles, because, you know, who looks at the back end of vehicles, right? Right? Just throwing it out there. So missing paint, whether it's because it was something that was supposed to be applied and wasn't, or whether it's because it's molded and they just didn't bother to paint it. Look at the windows of, say, the Earthrise, I think it was Earthrise, Ironhide ratchet mold, or the recent Legacy Skids and its back windows, right? I'm just saying, missing paint, missing paint. Sometimes we get the paint, but it rubs off because it's on something like a hinge and that hinge rubs off something else. That's unfortunate when that happens, especially if the color that's underneath is not a match. Sometimes we get weird things like red painted on top of red. If it rubs off, then I can at least live with it. Or flaking. Happened a lot with chrome. We had it happen with a lot of the transmetals. I don't know what you call it. The Ultra class, is that what it was? Maybe they were even bigger than that. For example, the Rampage and the Depth Charge. I've seen it happen as well with like the Generations Jetfire, right? That had that red chrome on him. So I've never been a huge chrome fan because it tends to flake off. I love paint and I love paint applications, but you got to be strategic with them. You got to place them right. You got to make sure that they're gonna last, because if they don't, well, that's a problem in and of itself. Or if the hue of the paint changes, that's also a problem. So paint chipping, missing paint, paint color changing, in other words, paint issues, took the number 5 slot. Coming in at number 4 is one that a lot of people got issue with. Again, not me personally. I've never encountered an issue with this in anything I have. Though I will admit, in certain cases, certain things seem fragile because of it. I'm talking about clear/translucent plastic. A lot of people find this to be more brittle and fragile. I don't find it any different than any other plastic, but a lot of people do, and they will point out a number of issues. For example, the Earthrise Datsun mold, specifically the prowl. A lot of people said, hey, the entire knee hinge for the lower part of the leg is clear plastic. There's a pin going through it. You're using clear plastic on a pin. Some people have said that it's just too rigid, and because it doesn't have any give, it's going to break. Case in point, the tabs on Siege Mirage, right? Even recently, a lot of people are nervous about tabbing in the doors and the roof of Legacy Skids because it's clear plastic. Some people didn't like the use of it, for example, on the Siege Cliff Jumper mold. Some people don't like the use of it for accessories. I've heard of the sword that comes with the Legacy Optimus Prime breaking with the peg stuck in Optimus's hand. Even the little juice container that came with my Studio Series 86 cup got a nasty stress mark on it. But that was my own fault. I'll admit, that one was my own fault. I understand the trepidation. I like the look sometimes, and there are people out there that prefer to have their entire collection be clear and translucent plastics, and there are other people that avoid it like the plague, man. Any way you cut it, enough fans feel like that this is shoddy materials, feel like that this is a danger. Look at the backpacks of the Datsuns. Look at the backpack of Studio Series 86 Jazz. If that breaks off, that's it. He can't transform, right? I don't so much have a problem with the use of clear or translucent plastic, but I think you should probably avoid it on hinges. I think you should probably avoid it on load-bearing pieces. It's just my take. Enough fans worry about it that sometimes it even keeps them from making purchases because they don't like the materials. It was able to take the number 4 slot. We're in the top 3, man. The top 3. And at number 3 is one that's kind of gotten a new, I'll say, lease on life, so to speak, not in a good way, because it's happening more and more and more and more. And it's the yellowing of plastics. Traditionally, this occurred when whites were exposed to sunlight for long periods of time. But that's not what's happening nowadays. Nowadays, when we look at things like the Earthrise Megatron, the Netflix Soundwave, the Earthrise Starscream, the Kingdom Cyclonus, the Selects G2 Sandstorm, the, what else is happening to? The Cyberverse Hammerbite, the, who else is it happening to that I know of? Some people are saying the Siege Jetfire. That's 7 off the top of my head that have plastics that are turning yellow. Some people are concerned about it becoming brittle. According to some replies some people have had when they inquired to Hasbro, it depends on the, I guess, the employee you talk to. Some of them say, oh yeah, that's an issue, we're going to send you out something of equal value, because they never have the thing you need. And others have said, yeah, we aren't going to be replacing that because the changing of color doesn't affect functionality. It affects the look, it affects the aesthetic. People paid good money, and you use shoddy, cheap materials without checking the effect of yellowing, without checking the effect of certain chemical reactions and UV light, and admitted that over the last couple of years you didn't do QC checks and you changed plastic suppliers. I call this a critical problem because people pay top dollar, overinflated prices for things that are now turning color when they shouldn't. Too many turning color when they shouldn't. And I am very concerned that the list will only grow. What about things like Kingdom's Galvatron or Kingdom Blaster? There's another one. What about some of the Micromasters, for example, that were gray? It's happened with whites, it's happened with grays, and it's happened with blues. Oh, the Shattered Glass Starscream is another prime example of this. It's very unfortunate. And sure, you can try whitening it, but it'll only happen again. Sure, you can paint it over, but you shouldn't have to. If it's on hinges, you're going to have a rough time with it. It's an unfortunate QC issue, and it's one that hasn't been addressed and that hasn't been rectified for fans. That's unfortunate. And it's giving enough people nervous feelings that there are people now who are very much looking at offerings and saying, is it blue? Is it gray? Is it white? What concern do I have? Do I still buy it? You shouldn't have to question yourself. You should be able to have confidence in a company, any company, that what they're offering you is the best value for your money. Enough fans feel like a product yellowing and turning color is not best value for money that it was able to take in terms of QC issues, the number 3 slot. Now, number 2 is a broad one, but a lot of things fit into this, and it is misassembly issues. Now, let me explain what got included here, because one could argue that the two of the same thing that I discussed earlier could be within the misassembly issues. However, the 2 of the same piece got so many votes in and of itself that it kind of deserved its own category, an own slot at number, what was that, 9? 9. So what other misassembly issues got included here at number 2? Well, this includes a number of things. It includes things like misaligned pins. It includes things like the shoulder assembly of Kingdom Galvatron. It includes things like missing, I'll say, heel pieces of the Earthrise Sunstreaker, so that when you first of all, it's hard to stand up because it doesn't have a heel, and when you transform it, it doesn't have part of the car. It could include things like, 2 arms that wouldn't allow transformation, or 2 legs that are the same that wouldn't allow transformation, right? It could definitely include those things. But misassembly also includes things such as the Golden Disc Pterosaur that had part of the hinge on the wing turned around. It includes things like overspray of paint. I threw that in here because that's kind of a misassembly issue, right? A ball joint that gets stuck because of glue overflow. The misassembled head of jackpot being not quite lined up, and then it's a bit of a beast to fix it. It can be done, but it's a bit of a nuisance and a beast to fix it. What else did some people throw in here? The two knees of the BotCon 2014 Cannonball being mirrored, and they shouldn't have been. Ninja Bill had to actually remove a pin on his legacy bulkhead to turn the entire lower body around because it was put on the wrong way. The shoulders of Power of the Primes, no, was it Power of the Primes? I think it was Prime Wars, Punch, Counter Punch, and the list goes on and on and on and on. Sometimes these are one-off issues. Sometimes these are issues that lots of people have, like the Kingdom Galvatron shoulder issue. You're putting out a product, put it out right, and when it's not right, go back and fix it. And if you're not going to fix it, don't put it out. It's pretty simple. Again, goes back to what I've been saying through this whole countdown. Fans, consumers, spend their hard-earned money to buy quality products. Make sure that what you're putting out is quality products. And that only leaves us with one. And here we are at number one. And number one is one that in some cases is fixable, and it is joint looseness. It can absolutely ruin an otherwise great offering. The Generations Rhinox, for example, a lot of people say Generations Rhinox had great paint, great engineering, great look, great offering, but his hips are so wildly loose he can't stand up. A lot of people pointed out, for example, the knees of the Worlds Collide Fangry being very loose. The hips of so many offerings like the Siege, Chromia was another one that was known to have looseness. A lot of ball pegs being misshapen can cause looseness at sections of where you move the arm. I had it happen with my... No, it wasn't even the ball peg. It was the hinge, actually. I had it happen with my Selects Ricochet, where I actually had to use Bondic to kind of rebuild a nub for a friction hinge because his whole arm, when I would lift it up, would just fall down, right? What else was kind of noted for having the issues? Oh, I guess we'll say the, like, Fembot mold that was used for... I can't remember any of their names now. Like Greenlight, for example, like there was a lot of ball pegs there. A lot of people said the ball pegs that were used for the Micromasters because the arms and stuff would fall off, or the ball pegs that were used for the Starscream that came out in RID 2015. I encountered that. His ball pegs were so like small that the legs just fell off him. I was able to build up the ball pegs, but I shouldn't have had to build up the ball pegs. And it goes all the way back to G1 and even Action Masters. Though those ball pegs, in that case, were like metallic, the leg socket often fell off. Some of the ball pegs can be fixed. You can build it up with the floor wax, or I use Bondex sometimes to build them up because I had a major leg issue with one of the members. I can't remember his name now. One of the members that's part of my Big Powered, right? One of the ones that came with Die Atlas, right? His legs loosey-goosey. Those got to be fixed. The problem is when you have hinges like elbow hinges or shoulder hinges. These are hinges. And if it's a hinge that has a screw, maybe you could tighten the screw to help it. But if it's a hinge that is pinned, you might not be able to help it. The shoulders, for example, on my Titans Return Blitzwing were so loose, and they were pegs. So loose that both of his arms fell off. I was able to put them in and thankfully actually make them tighter than they were originally. But it shouldn't have been that loose. You should have made sure that that tolerance is there. You have some that use a lot of friction joints that, you know, if they're not tolerance perfect, again, it's going to fall off. You could probably build up the joint a little bit or thicken it a little bit. But again, you shouldn't have to do it. If you have a widespread looseness issue, like that Rhinox from Generations, for example, perhaps you should have redesigned the hips. Perhaps you should go back and make sure that, you know what, this is not going to be widespread. We've seen it On the flip side as well, where things are sometimes too tight. Now that's not part of this, right? This number one is looseness, but just as a little side note, sometimes we've seen things that are so tight that it's scary to move it. That should have been fixed at the QC stage. That should have been fixed at the testing stage, just like the looseness. Some of it can be fixed, some of it can't, but any way you cut it, it shouldn't happen. And enough fans felt the same way, that looseness took the number one slot. And there you go, we've gone from 10 down to 1. And there was a lot on here. It was a difficult list to count up because a lot of people voted for specific characters, and some people muddied the waters between bad design or bad production choice and bad QC. Like, for example, the engineering that was used for the Universe Galvatron, right, was definitely designed for a Voyager scale offering at the time, but it got downsized to a deluxe, and that caused a whole bunch of issues in terms of it being over-engineered, in terms of the arm ball joints being so loose that the arms just fell off. It's a lot that was a problem there. The chest of that one didn't want to stay up. It was so loose that the head, at least on my copy, used to fall inside of the chest, right? So, you know, I mean, some of it is part and parcel, and some of it is a little muddy, but I mean, the overall list, I think, are things that we've all encountered. You know, we had things like thin plastic. There have been times where we've said, man, that panel feels so loose, or feels so thin that I'm afraid I'm going to break it. We have all suffered when we get something, we're excited to get it, and then we discover, oh no, I got 2 right legs, or I got 2 left arms, or whatever the case might be. GPS, I never experienced it, wouldn't buy anything with it because I'm too nervous about it, but we all know that that was a major thing. Missing parts. Man, I'm nervous, especially if I order something from online. I'm always nervous that I'm going to be the guy who's going to get the box who got stuff missing. What else? Snapping of pegs and hinges and pieces, right? Breakage issues. Sometimes, like I said, sometimes it's very rare, but I know a lot of people, for example, with the Kingdom Arc have said, hey, the shoulder just broke. You know, call the design flaw if you want, but maybe it's as simple as a screw was over tightened. You know, I think back to, say, the Studio Series 86 Scourge, and people said he's supposed to have a wrist swivel, but I can't turn his wrist. Or some people tried to turn his wrist so much that it snapped off. There's a screw on the bottom part. Loosen it, the wrist will turn. Sometimes it's paint overspray, or sometimes it's a ball joint is a little too big, or the socket is a little too small, right? So I've had that happen where I've had to pop something off and build up a ball joint or make the socket bigger, for example. We also had on here things like flaking paint, paint rub, and the flaking paint, to be fair, really kind of went for chrome. Or just outright missing paint. Now, the missing paint is a design choice. They mold it in. They say we just don't have the paint budget for it. But there have been times where the paint is supposed to be there and it's not, right? You have a face that's supposed to be painted blue and it's just left whatever color the plastic is. Or you have, you know, silver that's supposed to be applied to, like I said, the Legacy Skywarp, and half it's left off. You can paint it yourself, but you shouldn't have to. Clear plastic. A lot of people are nervous about the kind of up usage of that in the last couple of years. The yellowing becoming an increasing issue. It's the new GPS is what a lot of people are saying. Misassembly. If you were doing proper QC at your factory, then you wouldn't have widespread QC issues. Like the shoulders of that Galvatron should have been caught long before that ever went out to the public. And looseness. Yeah, you can have some one-offs, but we've had some like the Siege Chromia. That thing is just a loose, atrocious mess. And I got news for you. It wasn't remedied and fixed on the Nightbird version. That's loose and atrocious as well. So what else got some votes that didn't make the list and didn't make the couple of honorable mentions? What about things like paint overspray, though I did mention it. It is the problem that caused the heads of several of the buzzworthy silver streaks to be stuck in place, and you had to kind of push it down. Glue. I don't want to say overspray. I'm not sure how the glue is applied, but for example, it affected a lot of the Runamucks that came out. Runamucks? Runamuck's the white one, right? A lot of the Earthrise Runamucks, including one that I had. What else? This was an interesting one. Whirl outgasses sometimes and smells like a burnt out computer pack. That's a bad smell. I haven't noticed it with my whirl, but check the smell of your whirl, I guess. What else do we have here? Tabbing issues like the shoulders of Thrilling 30 Blitzwing, or the recent Skids roof, or the Core Class Hot Rod not tabbing in perfectly. C-clips, because one of the parts of the C would stress and break. What else had some votes here? Misaligned pins. That could have went in Misassembly. I might have talked about it there. Very first War for Cybertron offering I ever had was the Voyager Optimus Prime, and I didn't have it 10 minutes. I had to bring it back to the store. I had never had a QC issue before with any line. And the very first thing in War for Cybertron was a misaligned pin in Optimus, just waiting for that front tire to break off. Soft rubber plastics being used on pins. I hate when they do that. Or some people said that the soft rubbery plastic affects the hard plastic used around it, making it brittle. I haven't heard of that, but that's an interesting one. But soft goods for rubbers anyway, for rubbery plastics. It has its place, but not many places. So, I mean, that and so much more. All of us are fans of not just Transformers, but all of us are fans of many things. And all of us are consumers out in the world that buy products from different companies. Some companies, I think, lose their way. Not just Hasbro. Some companies lose their way and they put more into making profits or pleasing investors than they do customers. But if any business anywhere is ever going to succeed and stay successful and keep its longevity, guess what? You're going to have to keep your customers happy. We all go out, we all work hard for our money, and we want the best things for it when we make purchases. We want things that are going to last. We want things that are going to make us happy. Every one of us deserves that. Let me know which QC issues you guys think are the most significant. Did they make the list, or did they not make the list? I appreciate you guys coming by and giving me some of your extremely valuable time. I do know how important it is to you. If you're in a position to help the channel to grow, you can use the donate link. You can check us out on Patreon. You can see what we have to offer to you through spring, or of course you can hit the join button right here on YouTube and become a channel member. Don't forget to hit the subscribe button. Stick around, man. Have some fun with us. And especially don't forget that somehow, some way, each and every single day you do make a difference. And I look forward to the next time that you and I get together to have another visit, either in the live streams on Thursday nights at the stop motion premieres or the old fashioned way right here inside the videos.